Hello, my lovelies. It's Natassia here, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about how I overcame being a self-proclaimed perfectionist, how it hurt me for several years and stunted my growth, and I'm also going to share 4 tips and ways that helped me release the need to be perfect all the time. So if you're watching this and you consider yourself a perfectionist and it's been giving you anxiety and stress and you feel like you'll never be the perfect version of yourself that you aspire to be, let me just tell you right now, I feel you. I know how you feel. I have been there. I don't want to say it's easy to overcome being a perfectionist because it did take some time for me to slowly overcome it, but now I can confidently say that I don't strive to be perfect in everything I do. I just do my best. And if I did my best, that's all that matters. So just to give you a snapshot, some background on how my perfectionism affected me. Let's start back in school. In my school days, when I was in high school, I was that student that if I got a B+ on a test or on a project, instead of being happy that I got a good grade, instead I would be like, well, why didn't I get an A? Like, this isn't good enough because a B isn't perfect, right? So I would immediately go and scan and see everything that I got wrong, and I would zero in on that, and then I'd feel bad about myself and put myself down because I wasn't good enough. I would also, oh my gosh, I can't believe I would do this, but back when I was in high school and we would have to write reports, we couldn't type it up on the computer for a lot of the classes, so we would have to write them on paper, and it would have to be in pen, not pencil. And if I messed up a word, and instead of just scratching it out or using whiteout to fix it and then write over it, I would just start the paper over from scratch because it wasn't good enough if there were errors, even if I could correct them. And so, as you can imagine, it took me a long time to write anything. I would stay up late over studying because, I had to do my best. I had to get an A or else I wasn't good enough. And then if you think it stops there, this is how perfectionism literally bites you in the butt. Is then when I started my career and got my first internship, the first time I got constructive criticism and feedback, and it wasn't anything harsh because sometimes people don't give you constructive criticism and can be a little bit personal with it, but that was not the case. My boss was just pointing out little things that I could improve upon, and I just remember sitting there listening and just nodding my head and being like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, no, sure. And then as soon as I left her office, I went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just started crying because all I could think of is I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not good enough. How could I mess this up? I'm not good at this, when it was my first job. I wasn't gonna know everything, but I was being so hard on myself. And whenever I got a new project, I would stress out because I'm like, what if it's not good enough? And I'd be so scared to get any type of feedback because any feedback that was constructive, I saw as a personal attack on my skills and my talent. And it was rough. It was an ongoing cycle of stress. I have anxiety, and it just drove up my anxiety through the roof, where some days I would just be crying in the morning before going to work because I'd just be so anxious if I had to do a presentation or I had to turn something in and I was worried it wasn't going to be perfect or up to my standards. Can you relate to that? And that is truly the problem with perfectionism, is that we're setting these rules for ourselves that are totally unrealistic. And even if we achieve them, we're still not going to be satisfied or happy with ourselves, because then we're just going to set the bar higher. And it's like, well, now I have to do even better. Or if we get new responsibilities, we try out a new hobby or a new job, a new career, we're constantly going to be beating ourselves up if we don't exceed or achieve those rules and those perfect goals that we have for ourselves. And it's just going to be this never-ending cycle of self-loathing, of stress, of anxiety, of not feeling good enough. And you know, these unrealistic standards are BS, honestly, because what you deem as perfect is probably completely different from what somebody else deems as perfect. Like, we all create this vision, right, of what perfect means for us, but everybody's vision of perfect is completely different based off of your environment, your upbringing, your culture, where you grew up, your social circle. So that's how we know it's not real. Like, these perfect ideals that we need to live up to changes depending on the person. And so we're already struggling to become the perfect versions of ourselves. But if we meet somebody else, say a boss who's also a perfectionist, or you get into a new relationship and you want to be the perfect partner for them, their ideal partner may be different from what you think is ideal. And so what are you going to do? Add more to your list of, I need to do this, and this now to become this perfect person. You're just going to drain yourself. Trust me, I've been there. I felt like I needed to be a perfect version of myself for each and every person that I met, and you kind of lose your identity. You forget who you truly are because you're just trying to achieve these rules that you set for yourself. And like I said in the beginning, being a perfectionist stunted my growth, because trying new things or doing things outside of my comfort zone was always scary, because what if I wasn't good at it? Like, what if I wasn't the best at it, or I made a mistake, or I failed at it? Then it would just be confirmation for me that I wasn't perfect, that I wasn't good enough, that I didn't know everything, that I wasn't good at everything I did. And it's like I would see any mistake and tie it to my value as a person, which is so silly, because we all make mistakes, we all fail every once in a while, and that's okay. That's part of being a human. We learn from our mistakes, right? But if we're so scared to even do anything because we're scared of not being perfect at it, then how are you going to grow? And that's what I struggled with, is like, I felt like, you know, I would grow up to a certain point and then I would be stuck there because I was so scared of doing anything that I would see outside of my reach, because I was worried I wouldn't be good enough at it on the first try. Do any of you relate to that? Let me know in the comments below. I hope that makes you feel a little less alone if you're struggling with this right now. And it's rough, but I can tell you that once I let go of trying to be perfect, that's when I truly started flourishing. That's when I finally started growing, because I let go of that need to be the best at everything and to be perfect at everything that I did. So the first tip that I'm going to give you today is understand that failing doesn't equal failure. Just because you fail at something, whether it's a new hobby or it's a project at work, or maybe you're unhappy with your career and you want to make a switch to something else, that doesn't mean you're a failure. That just means you're learning more about yourself. And it's an opportunity to grow. I think that was one of the biggest mindset shifts that I had to make, was understanding that failure is okay. Failing is part of the learning process. Yeah, maybe you weren't good at something that you thought you wanted to do, or maybe it didn't bring you the joy that you thought it would, and you want to shift gears and do something else. That doesn't mean you're a failure. If anything, it's just making you understand yourself a little more and realize, this isn't for me. What is for me? What does bring me joy? The same if like you're in school and you get a C on a test that you studied for. It's like, okay, yeah, it wasn't an A. Well, what can you learn from it? What can you do differently? Maybe just study a different way, or maybe focus on something that you got wrong and focus on studying up a little bit more on that, instead of just thinking, well, I'm not good at this. No, it's a learning opportunity. We all make mistakes. We all fail every once in a while. I've failed several times. One great example is I created my first online business. And this was when I was starting to overcome my perfectionism, because I was finally like, okay, I've always wanted to do this. Let me do this. So I started this brand called the Boss Tees, where I would make inspirational t-shirts. And then I was in it for about a year, and then I just lost my drive for it. It wasn't inspiring me. I wasn't enjoying it. And I could have looked at it and been like, well, I suck at this. I'm a total failure. This was my first business that I tried to run, and I didn't do as good as I wanted to. No, I was just like, okay, I don't think this is for me. So I learned something from it. I learned, how to create a website. I learned how to work with sales. I was promoting myself on Instagram, and I'm like, I learned something from this, and that's the positive. And now I learned a little bit about myself too, because I know that I need a stronger motivation, and I need to do something that really aligns with something that brings me joy. So instead of seeing that experience as, oh, I'm a failure, I saw it as okay, I just learned that this isn't for me, and that's okay. So failing does not equal failure. It is an opportunity to learn about yourself and grow. And then tip number 2 that I have for you is telling yourself that if you gave it your best and you tried, that's all that matters. Even if you don't reach that 100% goal, if you reach 80% of it, that's still good. That's progress, right? You went from 0 to 80%. That's amazing. Don't focus on that 20% and be like, well, I didn't hit 100, so I'm not good enough. I need to be perfect. I need to do better. And it's okay to want to do better without thinking less of yourself. Think what can I do differently? What have I learned? Maybe there's something that I can do in the future to help me hit that 100% mark. But also celebrate, I did my best, and I'm proud of that. And even though I didn't reach 100%, I hit 80. And that's a big leap. That's growth right there, isn't it? So understanding that if you did your best and you gave it your all, that's okay. Even if you failed at something, or you didn't hit that vision of what that perfect goal was, because that still shows that you tried. and that you were passionate and that you gave it your all. That honestly is more rewarding than just being like, well, I need to do this because if I don't, then I'm not perfect. Because in a way, you're celebrating yourself and celebrating your own achievements. So understanding, I gave it my best. I wasn't perfect. I didn't live up to whatever that vision of perfection is, but hey, I tried my best, and you know what? I can do better next time without being hard on myself and still celebrating my growth. And now tip number 3, and this is hard, stop taking criticism personally. If somebody gives you constructive feedback, listen and try not to listen to those negative thoughts in your head that pop up, that it's like, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, I should have known better. Oh, how could I make that mistake? Oh, I have no idea what I'm doing. Just drown those out and focus on the criticism and try looking at it from the outside looking in and see it as like, okay, I can learn something from this. This is not an attack on my skills, on my worth as a person. It's just feedback. And then take time, process it, sit with it, and then see if any of that feedback is something that you can work on. And instead of seeing it as, I'm not good, I suck at this, see that feedback as, okay, this is an opportunity for me to get better at my skills, at my craft, at my job, without taking it as an attack on you. And I get it, sometimes, like I said, feedback is not always constructive. I've had people give me very unconstructive feedback that comes from a place of like anger or hurt, but you don't know what that other person's going through. Maybe they're having a bad day, maybe they're just unhappy, maybe they have some trauma that they're processing, but don't take that as an attack on you. It's more about the other person than you. So if you do get feedback that is not constructive, what I do is I'm like, okay, that doesn't serve me in any way. Like, that's personal. That has nothing to do with my job or with my skills. And then just extract from that conversation something that is useful. Like, oh, you said that it was hard to understand the report because the formatting was confusing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, maybe that's something that I can look into. Maybe that's something that I can review and see if I can fix it for next time. So just extract what is valuable and see it as a learning experience. I know that's hard. That's probably one of the hardest things. But with practice, you start it's almost like you start removing yourself from the situation, and it's like, okay, I'm zen right now. I'm just going to listen and observe and then extract what I can learn from this without being hard on myself and understanding this is an opportunity for me to learn. And then the fourth and last tip that I'm going to give you is focus on the good. Zero in on the good. I'm not saying like if you made mistakes on something, just be like, okay, whatever. No, there's still an opportunity to learn from it, but also focus on what you did good and what you feel good about. You know, if it's a new responsibility at work, a new project, or say a paper that you turned in for school that maybe you got a B+ and not an A. What I wish I knew back then when I was in high school and college was like, instead of focusing on everything that I did wrong, focus on the stuff that I did right and like acknowledge that and celebrate that. Because if we only focus on the negative, then we're only gonna focus on the negative. So we need to balance that out. Like, yes, there's things that I could improve upon, but look at the good work that I did too. Like, that's awesome. And acknowledging and celebrating the good helps you kind of release that negativity, and then it becomes easier to like balance it out instead of just focusing on the negative, which will make you feel bad about yourself and will make you feel like you're not good enough because you're not living up to that ideal of perfection. You're also focusing on the good, and you can acknowledge like, oh, but I got feedback that I did a really good job at that. Or you give, like, say you give a presentation at work and it's your first time, maybe you made a little bit of mess ups, but then if somebody comes up to you, maybe your boss, and it's like, hey, you did a pretty good job out there. Like, I know that you were nervous and we could feel that, but you did a really good job explaining XYZ. Hold on to that. Don't just dismiss that compliment. Be like, oh, okay, that's feedback from somebody else saying that I did do a good job. So maybe I should stop being so hard on myself and also acknowledge that win. And honestly, this will help you with anything new that you do too, anything outside of your comfort zone, because if you're going to try something new and you may not be that good at it the first time, because we're never perfect, right? When we try something new, it'll help you acknowledge like the good that you did. Like, okay, well, you know, I'm still not that great at it, but I tried and I got myself there. And with practice, I can get even better. Isn't that amazing? And it helps break that kind of cycle of negativity that starts whirling in your head whenever you're not perfect at something. And the way I like to view this is we weren't always good at everything that we're good at now, right? Like, you didn't know how to ride a bike the day you were born. I mean, I don't know anybody who was just born knowing innately how to ride a bike, right? You had to learn. You practiced, you fell, you probably cried, maybe you scraped your knee, but you got up and you kept practicing and practicing, and now it comes natural to you, right? And now you're good at it. You weren't good at it before though, but you just kept going and learning and growing. That's with anything in life. You're not always going to be perfect the first time you do something, but making that first step is already growth. It's already progress. And you just have to get up and keep trying again. And the more that you dust yourself off, you know, and you get up and keep going and learning, you might fall again, you'll get up, keep going. That's when you start growing. And I can confidently say that most of my growth, actually all of my growth over the past couple of years, has been thanks to me releasing the need to be perfect. Because if I was still holding on to that need to always be the best at everything I did, to always be perfect, to always be the smartest person in the room, to always be the most knowledgeable, I wouldn't have grown as much as I did, because I would still be uncomfortable with doing anything that I might be thinking I won't be good at initially. And so once I let that go, I started blossoming, and then I started becoming less afraid of failing and making mistakes, because I started learning that I can learn from those mistakes and from those failures, and I can just continue to grow from them. That's the beautiful thing of letting go of the need to be perfect, is that you can truly blossom and just enjoy doing whatever you want without having those thoughts at the back of your head thinking, well, oh, I messed up, then I'm not good at this. Maybe I should stop doing this. I'm not good enough. You might still get those thoughts, right? That's normal. But now you can just brush them off, because you've learned and you know from your past experiences, I can learn new things. I may not be perfect or great at it when I first start, but I can slowly get good as long as I'm passionate and I just get up and try again. I hope that you found these tips helpful and that my stories and struggles with perfectionism made you feel a little bit less alone if you're struggling with that need to be perfect all the time. I know it's hard, and I honestly think that I was the most unhappiest when I was still trying to be perfect at everything, because I could never celebrate any of my wins. I could never celebrate anything good that I did or any compliment or positive feedback that I got, because I would just zero in on everything I did wrong. But once I let that go, I finally realized, like, what is perfect? There is no perfect. Everybody's definition of perfect is going to be completely different. So why even bother? Just do my best and try my hardest. And if I gave it all I got, then I gave it all I got. And if I made mistakes, I can grow from them. And so I hope this video inspires you to reflect on your perfectionism and try to work on letting go of that need. I truly hope these tips can help you. I know it's not easy and it may be a long process, but I'm not a perfectionist anymore and I am so happy about that. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new to this channel, I post videos about self-love and fashion every week, once a week, so you can go check those videos out on my channel as well. And if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you subscribed, right, Milo? Say hi. Thank you guys, and I will see you in the next video. Bye! Love you! You don't need to be perfect.